It has often been said that luck favors the brave, but what few realize is that life never offers opportunity without first wrapping it in uncertainty. The question is not whether danger exists. The question is whether you have the wisdom to recognize the opportunity beside it. For every meaningful step forward a person takes, there is always a moment of hesitation, a quiet intersection where comfort points one direction and possibility points another. At that intersection, the future is decided, not by fate, not by chance, but by perception. You see, opportunity rarely announces itself with fanfare. It does not arrive dressed in certainty. More often, it appears disguised as risk, as change, as the unfamiliar request that asks you to grow beyond the person you have been. And because it feels uncertain, many turn away, not realizing they have just stepped aside from the very path that might have expanded their life. There is a curious tendency in human nature to seek safety above all else. Safety feels intelligent, predictable, responsible. Yet history, and quiet observation, reveals something remarkable. Every life that has come to mean something was shaped in moments where safety could not be the guiding principle. This does not mean one should chase danger recklessly. Wisdom has never been the companion of impulsiveness. Rather, it means understanding a deeper law, that danger and opportunity are not opposing forces. They are partners. Two sides of the same coin placed into your hand at critical moments of your life. Consider the sailor who refuses to leave the harbor because storms exist. He may preserve his vessel, yes, but it was not built for still water. Ships are crafted for the open sea, for distances that test their structure and reveal their strength. And so it is with you. A life spent avoiding all danger may feel secure, but security alone has never been the architect of a fulfilled existence. Growth asks something of you. It asks for movement before reassurance. It asks for belief before evidence fully appears. It asks that you trust the quiet voice within you that recognizes possibility even while your senses report uncertainty. Every season of advancement begins the same way, with a decision to move despite incomplete guarantees. The individual who understands this does not wait for fear to disappear. He understands that fear is often nothing more than a signal standing at the doorway of expansion. Look closely at your own life and you will notice a pattern. The moments that shaped you were not the easiest ones. They were the moments that required a higher version of you to step forward. So the real question is not, is this safe? The real question is, who might I become if I accept what this moment is asking of me? Because hidden inside the very situations that unsettle you may live the life that is trying to reach you. And once you understand this law, once you truly see that opportunity and danger walk side by side, you will stop interpreting uncertainty as a warning to retreat. Instead, you will begin to recognize it as an invitation to rise. Why opportunity and danger are inseparable. There is a principle at work in every human life, quiet, consistent, and utterly impartial. It is this: anything capable of enlarging your life will also ask something of your courage. Opportunity never travels alone. It arrives carrying a companion that many instinctively resist: uncertainty. When a door opens that could change the direction of your life, notice what you feel first. Rarely is it pure excitement. More often, it is a subtle tightening, a heightened awareness, a realization that stepping forward will require a version of you that has not yet been fully expressed. This is not a flaw in the design of life. It is the design. If opportunity came wrapped in comfort, it would demand no growth from you, and what requires no growth rarely creates transformation. A seed breaks open before it becomes a tree. Metal enters fire before it gains strength. Character is asked to stand in unfamiliar territory before it learns its own stability. Danger, in this sense, is not always catastrophe. More often, it is exposure, the possibility of failure, of criticism, of discovering limits you did not know you possessed. Yet it is precisely this exposure that stretches the boundaries of a person. Observe those whose lives carry depth and substance, and you will find a shared understanding. They stopped interpreting risk as an enemy. Instead, they learned to see it as evidence that something meaningful was within reach. Safety has its place. It preserves what already exists. But opportunity concerns itself only with what might exist, and the distance between those two states is always bridged by a measure of risk. This is why the attempt to separate opportunity from danger is futile. To ask for one without the other is to ask for harvest without planting, strength without resistance, expansion without movement. The wiser approach is not to eliminate danger, for that cannot be done, but to refine the judgment required to meet it intelligently. When you begin to understand this, hesitation loosens its grip. You no longer ask, "Why does this feel uncertain?" Instead, you ask a far more powerful question: what possibility would require this level of courage from me? For life has a way of signaling its greatest invitations through the very things that cause the heart to beat a little faster. And once you recognize that signal, you begin to step forward with a different posture, not reckless, not naive, but awake. How fear disguises some of life's greatest possibilities. Fear has a peculiar way of speaking to us. It rarely raises its voice. It does not need to. Instead, it whispers in reasonable tones. Wait a little longer. Perhaps you should be more prepared. This may not be the right time. And because these suggestions sound sensible, they often go unquestioned. Yet consider this carefully. Fear is not always a warning that you are in danger. Quite often, it is a signal that you are standing at the edge of expansion. Every meaningful advance in a person's life begins at a boundary, a line separating the familiar from the unexplored. When you approach that line, the mind naturally searches for stability. It prefers the known landscape, even if that landscape has grown too small for the person you are becoming. So fear steps forward as a guardian of the present. But what appears to be protection can quietly become confinement. Think back across your own life, and you may notice a pattern. The moments that shaped you, the decisions that introduced new strength, new confidence, new understanding, were seldom comfortable beforehand. There was hesitation, perhaps even doubt. Yet on the other side of that discomfort stood a larger version of yourself. Fear, then, is often nothing more than possibility wearing a mask. It is life's way of asking a question without words. Are you willing to grow beyond the borders of who you have been? This does not suggest that every fear should be rushed toward without thought. Wisdom is never reckless, but neither is it timid. Wisdom pauses just long enough to see clearly and then moves. Those who learn to interpret fear correctly gain a quiet advantage. Instead of retreating at the first sensation of uncertainty, they grow curious. They examine the feeling rather than obey it. They understand that calm is not the absence of fear. It is mastery in the presence of it. And so, when others step back, they lean slightly forward, not because they feel no apprehension, but because they have discovered something vital. Confidence is not granted before the step is taken. It is built through the taking of it. Many wait for fear to disappear before they act. But fear rarely disappears through waiting. It dissolves through motion. Walk toward it with intelligence, and it begins to lose its authority. Ignore it completely, and you remain exactly where you are. For some of life's finest opportunities do not announce themselves with certainty. They arrive quietly, concealed inside the very situations that ask you to be braver than yesterday. Learn to recognize that disguise, and entire new territories of living begin to open before you. The mindset required to act when others hesitate. There comes a moment in every consequential decision when the air seems to grow still. Nothing outward has changed, yet inwardly you sense that you are standing before a doorway. Some will approach that doorway, pause, and quietly step back. A smaller number will reach for the handle. The difference is seldom intelligence, background, or even talent. More often, it is a matter of mental posture, the way a person has trained themselves to interpret the unknown. Those who hesitate tend to search first for guarantees. They want the path illuminated from beginning to end. They want assurance that effort will be rewarded and that missteps will be few. Life rarely grants such conditions. The individual who moves forward understands something profoundly liberating. Certainty is not a prerequisite for action. Clarity of direction is enough. They do not demand to see the entire staircase. Seeing the next step is sufficient. This mindset is not built in a single dramatic instant. It is cultivated quietly through daily decisions that strengthen self-trust. Each kept promise to oneself becomes a small brick in an inner foundation. Over time, that foundation grows strong enough to stand upon when the ground ahead appears uncertain. Hesitation, at its core, is often a negotiation with one's own confidence. It asks, "Am I equal to what lies ahead?" The disciplined mind answers differently. It says, "I may not yet be equal to it, but I will grow as I proceed." Notice the shift. One waits to feel ready. The other becomes ready through movement. There is also an important calmness in those who act. Not urgency, not recklessness, but a steady composure. They are not racing against others. They are responding to an inner recognition that time will pass regardless. And what time touches, it changes. Doors that are ignored too long have a quiet way of closing. Understand this clearly. Action is not the absence of doubt. It is the decision that something else matters more than doubt. When you adopt this posture, hesitation begins to loosen its grip. You stop measuring every step against the possibility of failure and start measuring it against the cost of remaining unchanged. For inaction carries its own risk, a far less visible one. It is the gradual narrowing of life, the slow surrender of potential. Meanwhile, those willing to act discover an extraordinary truth. Momentum creates its own form of confidence. Each forward step clarifies the next. What once appeared intimidating becomes navigable, then familiar, and eventually, small. Opportunity has always favored the person who is prepared to move, while others deliberate endlessly, not because they are fearless, but because they have learned that progress belongs to the decisive, and once a person understands this, they are no longer waiting for life to begin. They are already walking toward it. Why growth always demands a measure of risk. Growth has never been found inside the boundaries of the familiar. It waits just beyond them, in that narrow stretch where comfort ends and uncertainty begins. A seed does not become a tree while remaining safely sealed within its shell. It must split open, and from the outside, that splitting might appear destructive. Yet it is not destruction, it is transformation, so it is with a human life. Every expansion of your abilities will ask you for one thing first: the willingness to step away from what is predictable. Understand this clearly. Risk is not the enemy of progress. It is the admission price. There is a common misunderstanding that those who achieve greatly possess an unusual tolerance for danger. In truth, what they possess is a deeper intolerance for stagnation. Remaining unchanged feels far more hazardous to them than the uncertainty of forward movement. Consider what happens when a person refuses all risk. Days become identical, thought grows repetitive, energy settles. The spirit, designed for creation and expansion, begins to feel confined without quite knowing why. Safety, when worshipped too completely, quietly becomes a cage. But the individual committed to growth sees risk through a different lens. They do not ask, "What if this goes wrong?" alone. They also ask, "What might my life become if this goes right?" That second question has launched more meaningful journeys than caution ever has. Now, this is not a call to reckless behavior. Growth is not gambling. It is the result of thoughtful courage, the kind that weighs a decision carefully and then moves with conviction. Measured risk sharpens the mind. It awakens attention. It calls dormant strengths into service. You discover capacities you could not have recognized while standing on perfectly stable ground. Reflect for a moment on the periods of your life that shaped you most profoundly. Rarely were they the easiest. More often, they were seasons that asked more of you than you believed you could give, and in answering that call, you expanded. Risk stretches identity. It invites you to outgrow the smaller version of yourself. Once you have walked through uncertainty and found your footing, fear loses much of its authority. What once seemed intimidating becomes simply another road you know how to travel. Remember this, a life devoted entirely to comfort may feel secure, but it seldom feels significant. Fulfillment asks for participation. It asks you to lean forward when instinct suggests retreat. Opportunity and danger will always arrive together. One tests your caution, the other tests your courage. Growth belongs to the person who learns to honor both and step forward anyway. How disciplined thinking turns uncertainty into advantage. Uncertainty by itself has no meaning. It is neither friend nor enemy. It becomes one or the other entirely by the quality of the mind that meets it. When an undisciplined mind encounters the unknown, it immediately searches for escape. Imagination, left untrained, begins sketching pictures of failure. Problems are exaggerated, difficulties are multiplied, and before a single step is taken, retreat already feels justified. But a disciplined thinker meets the very same uncertainty and responds differently. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" they ask, "What is this asking of me?" That single shift transforms confusion into instruction. Disciplined thinking does not eliminate unpredictability. Nothing can do that. What it does is place you in a position of authorship rather than reaction. You begin to respond deliberately instead of emotionally. Consider a captain at sea. Storms cannot be negotiated with. Winds cannot be commanded to rest. Yet the trained captain does not panic at the sight of darkening skies. He studies them, adjusts the sails, corrects the course by degrees. The storm, which terrifies the unprepared, becomes manageable in the hands of one who has learned how to think. Your mind is your navigation system. If it is governed by impulse, every unexpected turn feels like a threat. But when it is governed by discipline, uncertainty becomes rich with possibility, because you know you can adapt. This form of thinking is not dramatic. It is built quietly through habits, pausing before reacting, examining facts before forming conclusions, and refusing to let fear make decisions that belong to reason. Over time, something remarkable occurs. Where others see only instability, you begin to notice openings. Where others hesitate, you recognize timing. What once appeared chaotic begins to reveal patterns. Advantage is rarely handed to anyone. More often, it is perceived, seen first by the individual calm enough to recognize it. And calm is never accidental. It is the product of a mind trained to remain steady when circumstances are not. Remember this: uncertainty visits every life without exception, yet it does not shape every life equally. Some are mastered by it, others are elevated by it. The difference is disciplined thought, the quiet ability to remain clear, to remain directed, and to remain purposeful when the path is not fully visible. When you cultivate that kind of mind, you no longer wait for perfect conditions. You create progress within imperfect ones, and that is one of the highest expressions of personal power. So, opportunity will rarely announce itself with comfort. More often, it will arrive disguised as uncertainty, sometimes even fear. Do not waste your years waiting for the path to feel completely safe. It never will. Instead, become the kind of person who can walk forward with a steady mind and a disciplined spirit, one who sees possibility where others see peril. Because in the end, life does not reward those who avoided danger. It advances those who recognized the opportunity standing quietly beside it and had the courage to step